It's Stephon Castle. So there was the thing about him wanting to be a point guard. It wasn't put out by him. I think it was put out by like people close to him probably. Do you buy into him wanting to be a point guard at the next level?
I do, but this is a tough one because this whole pre-draft process, if you're a player and you go hire an agent, the agent's gonna be like, how can I make you happy? Like, what can I do? And if they're like, hey, do you want to be a guard or do you want to be just a wing? Like, because they're trying to navigate you to the perfect spot for you to have success and completely get it. If you want to be a point guard, they don't want you to get drafted to a team with 4 point guards, and you're never going to be what you want to be. So I think he kind of I'm guessing, probably had a conversation with his agent. And his agent's like, you want to be a point guard? I'm going to get you to a spot where you can be a point guard. So then that quote came out and everyone freaked out of like, oh, he's probably got an ego and then he's probably a head case. Or I was like, guys, this is what agents do. They're paid to do this. They are paid to make their clients happy. So I'm not over worrying about that. I mean, this is also a guy that has been a guard for most of his life and kind of went to UConn to learn how to be a winner. He said, I wanted to be a winner. So what do I got to do? And they said, we need you to play alongside 2 really good guards. And he's probably like, fine. So I think that's the luxury he has from is with that size. Um, you can say, hey, maybe he's a wing. And at one point, it's like maybe he can just play a lot of positions. But I would buy it because I think he's just trying to say, like, this is what I want, but whatever team drafts me, like, they're probably going to work and have a vision for me. So I get it. I don't get too worked up on some of those stuff because I think it's just like that's agents pulling strings, trying to navigate you somewhere or trying to at least, if a team has 4 point guards, they're like, hey, this guy wants to be a point guard. So you might have a headache if you don't, do your homework.
Yeah, definitely. I also agree with that. Like, um, I think that Stephon Castle could be a point guard, like at the next level. If he wants that, it's probably like you said, something his agent is putting through right now. But at the end of the day, it'll come down to whether or not Stephon Castle is actually able to transition into the NBA and is able to scratch or grab his role for himself. Like that's always the case. Like when you're a rookie, like you can't really demand being like, oh yeah, I want to play this role. Like your role is whatever the team wants you to play at first. So that being said, I definitely think that Stephon Castle could be a guard, a combo guard. Um, Point guard, then again, that's something like what kind of point guard do you want to be? Do you want to be a Luka Doncic type point guard, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander type point guard, Mike Conley type point guard? Like, what really do you think would be his type there?
It's funny because the Castle comment I feel like has brought that same discussion to kind of our group of being like it almost seems when you start thinking about it like the point guard position's almost kind of like expiring. And what I mean by that is like you are getting the Lucas, like you are getting guys that's like, can you handle the ball and make decisions and run an offense like or for a set? I think that's where it's kind of shifting to. Like I think he has point guard skills. Now, do I think he's like a natural 100% like prototypical point guard? No, I think he's more of a combo guard, like you said. I would agree with that. Where I'd like him to play off the ball and then coming down, you could run plays through him because he can make the right decisions, kind of like alternate. I think that's just kind of the way the NBA is transitioning now. Is like you need to have 2 guards in the backcourt that can kind of run to things and give you different looks. Castle's a I like him with the ball in his hands. And I know people are like, well, what about his shot? And I'm like, well, he's still like the shot's a weakness. I get it. I think his situation at UConn, he had Alex Caravan, who was a fantastic shooter. He had Cam Spencer, fantastic shooter. Tristan Newton, very good scorer. Donovan Clingan. he had a lot of guys that were very good at scoring and getting their shot and were older. So I don't think Dan Hurley was going to take this freshman and say, you can do whatever you want offensively. And I think he understood that. I think he said, I'll do whatever I need to do to play and to, be a winner. But like to finalize your question, I think there's a lot of upside for him. I think he can be a guard. I think he's a talented playmaker. I think he makes good decisions. Some people have questioned like his ability to separate, and I'm like, sure, but he's also 6'6" and is patient to use his body to kind of overpower smaller defenders. He can get to his spots. So I like his game a lot because I think there's a lot of good basketball awareness and intelligence, and that's why I think he can be a guard that can run your offense. If we're talking about like Mike Conley point guards, though, I don't know, but I'm just saying maybe he's like the Cade Cunninghams or the Lucas, where you're just the bigger bodies that aren't the quickest, but they can kind of get to their spots and help your team run an offense.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, I'd say. Just like his ability to pick his spots, because that's not something I noticed watching him, and that's because I didn't watch him as much, admittedly. Like I focused mainly on international prospects.
Mhm.
Um, and G League Ignite guys. Speaking of which, you have Ron Holland, who's someone that I know you're not as high on, and then you have Castle, who's someone you are high on. And if you look at their physical profiles, and I guess maybe if you list like their top three things they're good at and three things they're not good at, it looks very similar, but obviously it's different because you're at different places with them. So can you touch on why you are higher on Castle a little bit more, like in comparison to someone like Holland? So just
This
with
is
the
my
tools.
Yeah, this is my favorite question I've ever gotten this whole cycle because I've literally been like up at night thinking like, why are people high on Castle and not on Holland? Or why is it the other way? Why are you high on Holland and not on Castle? I was like, they're so the idea of them is very similar, like you're saying. So it makes sense to kind of be a fan of both. I've been the funny thing is, like, people think I'm the Ron Holland doubter, and I've been one of the highest guys on him the whole year at No Ceiling. So there's guys that just are much lower on him than me. But um, Ron's in transition, he is so much fun. He's just a fighter jet taking off of a runway. He's one of those like if he has an opening in transition, you're just kind of like edge of your seat watching. It's very fun. He's probably one of the fastest guys with the ball in his hands in the open floor in this draft. He's got great athleticism. He's got, like you said, he's got questions about his shot. It's very erratic. He'll have wide open looks, and it's going left, going right, and you're like, there's no one 10 feet beyond you. And then all of a sudden he'll hit a step back, and it's nothing but net. And you're like, why does the difficult one easy looking and the hard one or the easy ones look really, really hard? There's just some decision making with Ron too. There's some defensive inconsistencies. I think you can argue that it was a very bad situation. Like, I don't think it was the right situation for Ron. I know people love to look at his stats and be like, look what he did. He averaged 2 point whatever steals per game. And I'm like, well, they were down 30. He had a lot of opportunity to gamble, and the Ignite tried to give him the ball as much as possible and be like, you can do whatever you want. And I don't think that's Ron's role at the next level. I think he could be a really good piece alongside whoever's like your number one guy. So I'm still high on him. I've got him, I think, on my board at 10. Like, I still like his upside. I think that's the range I'd get really excited about. Okay, if everything checks out, I'd take him. Castle he's not as explosive as Ron, but he also understands how to play to his speed. His shot is very erratic. It's weird because in high school he had way more confidence of like, oh, I'm shooting. In college, there was like the hesitancy where he was like, I gotta keep running. I keep running the offense. I gotta find a next teammate to pass it to. So I don't know if it was just hammered home of like, hey, keep trusting your teammates, run the sets. But I just like Castle's defensive strides he took from high school to this year were remarkable. I think he's become now one of like the top defensive potential players in this class just because he's really, really tough guarding on ball. He's got some good awareness. So it's just one of those things with Castle. I kind of like the tools that have took a really big step in the right direction, and I still think there's a lot of potential. With Ron, I was kind of wanting more of a step this year, and I feel like it's kind of the same questions I had for him coming into the year. Like high school, I was like, okay, the shot's got to get better, the decision making's got to get better. He's got a high motor on the court, but it kind of goes left and right. And defensively, I've got questions, and those questions are still there. Coming into the year with Castle, I was like, he needs to shoot it. He needs to be a better defender. And like one of those areas took a humongous step that I was not expecting. So I just think it's kind of the development perspective where I'm at right now. Like I still think Holland could land with the right team and right fit, but I still think there's a lot of Castle upside left. I hope that makes sense. I know I'm rambling right now. You guys you're hitting me with good questions, so thank you.
Yeah, all good. Like, I really like this kid's question as well because I'm also like, man, Ron Holland and Stephon Castle are like neck on neck on my big board currently. Like, they're both in the top 5 for me, and they're like ongoing flipping every day or so for me. Like one day it's Ron because of his frame, then it's Castle because I like his IQ a bit more in decision making. Then again, it might be Ron Holland because he's the more athletic guy, and then again Castle because it looks like on the draft combine that his shot is looking to come around. It definitely looks like he's de developed that.
If Holland went to UConn and Castle went to G League Ignite.
I think Castle would have more believers because he would have been able to show more of what he can do offensively. But I also like now I'm thinking about it, like I don't know if he's getting unlocked defensively at with the Ignite. Holland would have had to just completely buy into like, and everyone's gonna be like, well, hey, he could have done that easily. Yeah, he absolutely could have done that easily, but it took a lot for Castle to be like, hey, I'm not gonna be the guy, but I want to win. What do you need me to do? And Ron could have easily done that. I've heard he's a great kid. So I don't know. It's kind of what I talked about earlier. It's not more of like a, hey, if they switched, I'd like the other one better, because I don't think it's just the fit. It's more of the growth and development that I saw from one. And then the questions are still the same with Ron. And I also, it's just, I'm buying Castle's shot. Like I'm buying that it's going to develop and work. And I think he plays the game at his speed. And that doesn't mean like, oh, he's only playing at one speed. He understands how to play down to like make people play down to his speed. Like Ron tries to play at his speed, which is just like he wants to go fast. He wants to get downhill. I think Castle makes defenses come down to his level in between and stuff like that. So I think I'd still lean towards Castle just because I do think fit's always important, situations important. But if Castle was anywhere else, we probably would have seen a lot more offensive scoring and probably calm down some people about his outside shot, but we'll see.